And that's because of the historical, attributes with Glenn Allman and so forth. So even though they were making the Sunburst model Les Paul guitar and they looked amazing and so forth, the Stratocaster had come out in 1954 with a false start in 53, but it had a contoured body and it had 3 pickups and had a longer scale length like the Telecaster. And the Stratocaster was gaining in popularity, and Buddy Merrill on the Lawrence Welk show played the Stratocaster, and Buddy Holly also played the Stratocaster guitar in the late 50s, and he became pretty popular and stuff. So the Stratocaster had a contoured body, and it was lighter than the Les Paul guitar. So the Gibson engineers got to thinking, again, we've got to come up with something new. So in 1959, they started working on their double cutaway guitar, but they decided to go to 2 Florentine sharp cutaways on the guitar and to sculpture the model, to contour it, to cut off the sharp edges so that it was more comfortable to hold, and they made it thinner as well so it wasn't so heavy. Well, meanwhile, Les Paul had seen these SG-style guitars, and he didn't really like the fact that it was a lot lighter and didn't have the full-bodied sound with a maple top. But the SG model came out in 1960, and they had a crossover where they were still building the maple top Sunburst Standard and the Customs into 61. The Sunburst ones in 61 are pretty rare, but the SG started in 1960 with a Standard, and then the Customs they did in white with the gold parts like the one I'd seen on the Three Musketeers commercial. And so the SG guitar was in effect their answer to the Stratocaster with a contoured body. And it was very comfortable to play, and it was a lot lighter, and it had the humbucking pickups, and it had the famous Gibson neck, which was very comfortable. And so the SG started off with a bang, and they stopped making the single cutaway guitar. And meanwhile, Les and Mary had to deal with the fact that rock and roll hit. And all these rock and roll artists were happening, Gene Vincent with their label Capitol, and he did Bebop Lulu, and you had the Comets, Bill Haley, and they had Buddy Holly. Rock and roll was a major force in the mid-50s, late 50s. It really started on pretty strong, and so it basically really changed a lot of people's lives, and their careers changed considerably, even though Frank Sinatra still had his edge. He lost part of that edge too, so it was pretty sad, and Les Paul and Mary Ford had refined their sound, and they had lost their contract with Capitol because the sales were waning, and so with Mitch Miller, remember Sing Along with Mitch? Yeah. Or Sing Along with Itch, as we used to say. He signed them to Columbia, and so they started recording with Columbia, and Les at that point had started using low impedance, just like the microphones, and the telephones were low impedance. So they got a real clear, beautiful tonality, and Les was using tape machines by that time with Ampex. And so if you listen to the late 50s recordings of Les Paul and Mary Ford on Columbia, you will hear Les Paul's sparkling, beautiful tonality with the low impedance pickups that Wally won from him on his Les Paul guitar. So Les would take every single guitar he'd get from Gibson, and he would let Wally chop it up, take the finish off them, gouge holes in them, put big old things in them. So Les and Wally basically ruined all of his guitars. Just, but they're still collector's items because they belong to Les Paul. And one of them showed up on eBay the other day, and people sent me a bunch of emails. Is that one of Les's guitars? And it was one that I played, a white Custom that he had with low impedance pickups on it, so I identified it. And so the fellow who sold it to the guy on eBay, they all found out that it was one of Les's guitars, so I'm not really sure yet if that's been returned to Les's son or not. But so all of Les's guitars were chopped up, and so he mangled most of his guitars for the sound, to get that really, really great sound and so forth. And he really didn't care much about the originality and so forth. He even had a McAfee guitar like Django Reinhardt and stuck a pickup on it and so forth. So when I was with Les in Les came out to California in '73 afterwards and played at McCabe's, and there's some pictures in the second book with that and so forth. And then we went to the Chicago NAMM show together, and that was a lot of fun. And then in 1975, Les came out to pick up Bobby, his son, with Mary Ford, and he asked me if I wanted to come to New Jersey with him and work on a book, my book project, and to see if we could talk to publishers and so forth. And so Les and Bobby came by my parents' house here in San Diego and got my parents' permission to take me to the East Coast, and so off we went on this amazing ride across the country. And so we took off and we drove into Arizona, and I called my friend Harvey and his girlfriend, and they came over to visit in the morning, and we hung out with them a little bit, and then we took off again into New Mexico. And Les drives pretty quick. He's always in a hurry. So we stuck it out and drove on through the night into Texas, and we just kept driving all night long. And while we were in the middle of Texas, in the middle of nowhere, we saw a very large object go across the sky from the right to the left. It looked like a big white aircraft carrier in the sky. We don't know what it was, but it was big. It was moving fast. And the three of us saw it, and it was very, very clear. And it was pretty amazing. So we pulled into a gas station about 20 minutes later, and Les rolled down the window and said to the guy before he asked for gas, "Does anybody out here ever see any UFOs?" And the guy leaned forward and looked at us and goes, "Never." So we thought, oh, this is scary. Fill it up. Let's get out of here. So we took off, and eventually we got into another hotel. And I think the next day we ended up driving in towards Cleveland. And it was the sky was all hellfire red. It looked pretty scary out there. But we kept going, and eventually we got into New Jersey, and we were driving close to Edison's laboratory. And Les Paul was a big fan of Edison, and his inventions and all that kind of stuff. So he told me about Edison and so forth. And I guess that's what Edison, New Jersey now, same place. And so then we got there, and this was in February, and it was cold. And so I got to my own room upstairs where Colleen used to sleep, their daughter, Mary Ford's daughter. And so Les and I would talk about guitars, and I'd make notes and so forth, and we would go shopping a couple times a week. And I remember I asked him, "Well, how come you have to buy Listerine now?" He goes, "Well, they gave me Listerine for years for free," because it was on their television shows and so forth. And but he had to buy it then and so forth. And also we get a couple cartons of cigarettes for Wally, because Wally was a smoker. And so sometimes I'd go into Wally's room and talk to him, and I could see the windows in his room were all caked over with nicotine. So it was kind of scary, what happened, because eventually we lost Wally. He lost his bass player, main chopper, and he typed all his letters and took care of Les for many, many years. And so we lost Wally to tongue cancer. But I digress there. So Les, he and Mary Ford weren't getting along too well in the early 60s, and Mary wanted to relax and kick back and take care of the kids. And Les wanted to keep going, go, go, go. He's a night owl, and he'd keep pushing, just like we drove across the country so quick. And he was a real go-getter, but it was too much of a pace for Mary. And Carol and some of her family thought that it would kill her, and they thought it wasn't safe for her. So unfortunately, Mary grabbed a couple guitars, a Gretsch Penguin and her SG Les Paul Custom, and both kids, and took off and left Les. And he was really upset. And they came out here to Pasadena, and so they had a divorce. And that's about the same time that the second contract on the Les Paul guitars had ended. So they didn't renew the contract, and it was quite a blow to a lot of people, and especially Ted McCurry and his family because they were very close to Les and Mary, and nobody, like in my family, ever gets divorced, and so it was very important, you know, that well, Ted was very, very distressed about it, he told me. So anyway, Les went into seclusion, to retirement, and Mary was out here in California. And so eventually Les started playing again with Bucky Pizzarelli, and then I came by with Steve Rodriguez in 1972, and we talked all about guitars, and I guess because of my enthusiasm and, you know, the guitar history and so forth, you know, Les decided to keep going with everything, and